morning, guys. We wanted to thank you for attending our workshop from last week about Unleash Shiny, and I was thinking it would be easier if I provide some screencasts to correct exercise 1. So this first exercise was about importing Bulma dependencies to be able to use it in Shiny. The first thing you need to do when you try to import an external template is to inspect the original sources. And this is what I'm doing now. I know that I want to import Bulma, so I go to the Bulma website, I click on the documentation, and the first thing I do is I review what I should import. And usually you have a getting started, and here it's a start guide. So if I open the start guide, I have several ways that indicate me how to download Bulma. And the way we used during the workshop was to use the content delivery network. Some of you may not be familiar with this word. So what happens, when you have a web page, usually is that you include your scripts, you include style sheets within these tags. So here it's for a script, but for a style, it will be a link, and then you provide the source to the file. And what happens, most of the time you have those files locally on your computer or in the server for the website, and you point to the good folders. What we do here is that we use a CDN, which is a provider for hosting all these files for you. So people put their packages on a package manager, and everything is done for them. So for Bulma, for instance, here is the CDN content. And in the CDN, you have a lot of files. So I have CSS, SAS, I have the changelog, license, package, JSON, README. So it's a bit like a package, R package, if you're familiar with R packages, except that here is really for web development. In our case, Bulma is only a CSS framework. There is no JavaScript. We only need to go in the CSS folder. So if I click on the CSS folder, I have several files. I have CSS, css.map, min CSS, right to left.css, and so on. What is the difference between those files? The difference between CSS and min.css is the minification process. And if you are not familiar with the minification process, what the minification does, it simply reduces the size of the file to load so that the page loads faster. And this is what you want in production. You don't want your website to take a lot of time to load. That's the main reason we do minification. You don't need to care about other files except the right to left. The right to left, I explained during the workshop, is when you work in Arabic countries or countries that read from right side to left side, you may need to have a specific design, and in that case, you import the right to left. And if you import the right to left, you don't need the minified.css. And if you import the minified.css, you don't need the right to left. So it's one or the other, but not both at the same time. So in the first question, I give the link to the CDN, which provides version 0.9.0. You may notice that now the version is 0.9.1, and it always changes. So that's a good habit to go to the website here in the JS delivered and check different versions, because you may want other versions than the latest one. And the first step was to create the web dependency, the HTML dependency. You need to create your dependency in Shiny. So you use the HTML dependency function. You call it Bulma depth. You should just choose a meaningful word here, not bootstrap, because it's not bootstrap, of course. And here we only put the name. I put Bulma because we are working with Bulma. I put the version. Here it's, let's take 0.9.0, which is provided with a link. This is here, I would say, the most critical part. Here I provide the CDN link. I'm working locally online, so I use href, which is a link to an external source. If I was working locally, I would provide and here you may look at the function HTML dependency. I would provide another parameter, which is actually file, and you provide the path to the file in your package. And here I put the link to, depending if I have scripts, I would put the link to the scripts, and in my case, if these are style sheets, I put the path to the style sheets in the CDN, which is css bulma.min.css. And I'm done with this dependency. So if I load it in our console and I print it, this is what you get. You get an HTML dependency with the name, the version, the source, and so on. The second question is fairly simple. It's now that you have your dependency, you need to attach it to a given tag. So you have two ways to do that. The new one is using the tag list. And here it's really simple. You do tag list of your tag, and you provide the name of the dependency, which was created before. And this is it. So if I load my dependency now, and I load that function, I can apply the dependency to a given tag. And if you remember, to know whether a dependency is found for a given tag, I have the find dependency function from HTML tools that will find all dependencies for a given tag. I will call add Bulma dependency on a div tag just for the example, and this is what I get. So the div tag has a dependency here, so which that's exactly what we wanted. So it means that our function is working. So this is a process how you do that manually. But I created a lot of templates in the past, and the process is repetitive. It takes some time, and this is something you don't know. You don't want to repeat yourself. So I created the sharpen package mainly to automate those tasks, and you have a function called create dependency. And if you use this create dependency function, you're able to do that only with one command. So sharpen does everything for you. You may specify different options. So here you have the function sharpen option function. If you specify local equal false, it would say that you want to point to a CDN, and you just point to files online. You don't download them on your computer. So now I want to download Bulma. How do I know I should choose Bulma and not another word? So this is one question, an important question which was asked during the workshop. And the reason why you choose Bulma is because when I type Bulma here, when I go to JS Deliver, I type Bulma. This is the first one I get, and I checked. It's really the same I have here. It's extremely important because you may have different results and you may not have exactly the template you are looking for. So this is something you should check, obviously. And once you're sure about that, you can really point to that folder. A lot of people had VPN issues during the workshop. I don't think I'm personally not connected through my VPN right now, but I think it doesn't work with a VPN, so you should avoid using VPN in that case. And I load my function, and what it does is it creates everything for me. So I have the add Bulma depth function. Inside I have the dependency, and I attach the dependency to my tag, and I have everything. So you may notice that I have extra files here. I have min CSS and right to left min.css. Now Sharpen is, quite honestly, it's an early stage. It's working well, but it's not able to filter files. So what I need to do in that case is I just select the file I want, which is the minifile.css. I don't want the right to left in my case, and this is it. And this file was created in the R folder of your package, and you don't have anything in the inst folder except the workshop instructions here. So now let's say you don't want to point to the CDN and you really want to have dependency on your computer for different reasons. So what happens? You will change local to true. By default, it's true, so you don't necessarily need to do that. But if you specify true, you see that I still created my dependencies, so in the R folder. But this time, I downloaded everything in the package. So this is why I have package here now. As I told you in the source, I don't have href anymore, I have file, and I'm pointing to the Bulma -091. And if I check the inst folder, I have this folder in which I have the CSS, and inside the CSS, I have the right to left and the min.css. So obviously, you clean the folder as you want, and you're done. Because we are working in a package, don't forget to frequently run DevTools all if you want to test your function. And this is it. So this is a really critical step, importing dependency. And the next step is to test this dependency and create the first template elements. The first thing you create is a page template. This is something you can observe if you are using Fluid page from Chinese, a Bootstrap page. These are the main wrapper function, and inside this wrapper you insert anything you want. And here it's exactly the same principle. How do you know that? This is a good question. So we still go to the documentation. We go to overview, start, and most of the time people provide something for you. So in that case, they provide the starter template. Because here Bulma documentation is very comprehensive, it is very good quality documentation. If it's not the case, you may still inspect the main page and get elements you want here. So what I do is I copy the template. This is what I did for the exercise, so you don't need to redo that. You have exactly the same template. And it's time to convert this HTML to R code. So this is what I explained during the workshop. This is not a really interesting step. It's just conversion, and you have a function which automates the process. It's called HTML to R. It converts, as it says, HTML to R code, and you can target a specified portion of HTML, so with the path parameter. So if I do /HTML, I will convert everything inside here. If I target body, I will only target body, and so on. So this is important. So what I'm doing is I copy the function and I will put the HTML code into single quotation symbols. Why single quotation? Because here you have double quotation. And if you had double quotation, R will not understand and it will simply crash. So I copy my code, I put it inside, I run the function, and this is the code I get in the output. I get HTML, I get the head inside, I get everything I want. And now it's time to do some considerations. So first of all, you won't need HTML because Shiny is adding this tag when you're running the application. You only need head and body. And the second thing is because we already created the dependencies, you don't need to import, as it's done here using the tags link, you don't need to import the CSS file because this is something we do with the HTML dependency. And in the question 2, I ask to create the Bulma page function. So this is what I'm doing now. I create the Bulma page script, and inside I create my Bulma page function. For now, it's just an empty function. And I copy this skeleton I provided. It was here just to help. I told you we just need head and body. And the way you return, so what you want is to return a list, a tag list. So that's the reason why I use a tag list function here. And what I do is I copy what I get from the HTML to R results. So the first part is a head. Remember, I don't need to include CSS. So the conversion really saves you time because you don't have to convert those meta tags by hand, which basically provides some options for your application. This is really a game changer. And inside the body, what we need, we don't need actually what is inside. The section is a specific tag from Bulma. So here we just need the body. And now it's time to parameterize the function. The first parameter, the most important, is what you put inside. And this is using the dot dot dot. I use the dot dot dot. This is what is done. If you look at the fruit page, the fruit page function. So the fruit page function is calling the bootstrap page, and inside I have a main container which has a class container fluid, and I pass everything I want in the dot dot dot. And then there is an optional title parameter. And the title refers to what you see here. This is what is written in the title. So getting started with Bulma, this is what will be printed when you run the application. So the title is not mandatory, it's an optional parameter. This is the reason why I do title equal null, because by default I don't necessarily want to have a title. And this is it. I'm okay with that function. So the second most important thing is to add dependencies, add the Bulma dependencies to this body tag. Why do you add it to the body tag? Because you know that it will be always here. Let's consider if you assume you have a Bulma element, it could be a Bulma button, but this button is not here every time you do an application. So if you add dependency to that button, it will not work, because when this button is not here, dependency will not be added. And here you really make sure that it's always there. This is exactly what you want. So let's do DevTools load all. And I'm going to create a page and just check if my dependencies are correctly handled. So this is the first check I do from programmatic point of view, and then I will do a user test to see whether I can really display Bulma elements as they should be. I use the find dependencies function. If you remember from HTML tools, this is really something you will use all the time. And I call Bulma page. And you see that I get a dependency, I really get Bulma. So this is everything I wanted. Here I'm not pointing to the CDN because I showed you the second example with local files. It will work exactly the same with the CDN. And now it's time to test it with a component. So how I did that? So inside I didn't have time to create a new component. So what I did is I copied the HTML template from this element. So it's the teals element in the layout section. If you go to teals, you see something really nice about Bulma and one of the most important component. And I copied this, that's it. So you may imagine in the future that you would have to convert these teals into R with HTML to R and then create parameters to provide the title, to provide the subtitle, to provide the content, to even provide images if you want. So this is what is nice about creating components is, thinking about the way you will create parameters, but the conversion is, as I told you, it's really boring, it's not interesting. So now let's test the dependency. It's a very simple application with a Bulma page. I have nothing in the server, and I run it here from the R Markdown. And here I'm done, right? I have everything. It's a Shiny app. There is the Bulma dependencies, and it's printing Bulma perfectly. And it means that I'm successful regarding importing dependencies. And you can check that by inspecting the page with the Chrome Developer Tools or Firefox Developer Tools that you want. And if I go to the head, you see in this script, I have application HTML dependency here. And you see I have Bulma. I have the good dependency I want. And if you're not happy about the latest version of Bulma, you can redo the process. I will re-import the good dependencies I want. So let's say I want the version 0.5.0. I choose the tag here. I know that 0.5.0 exists, obviously. You have two ways to check that. So the first way is to go to the CDN website, and the second one I show you in a few minutes. So now it overwrites everything. You see that at that time there is only one file inside, you only have CSS. So this is, the function does everything for you, so it's automatic. I'm pointing to a CDN, so you still get the previous dependency because it's not removing other dependencies, but this one is really pointing to the CDN, and I could do it locally, you know, if I provide true here. And this is it. I'm okay with that structure, and I can do DevTools load all. In inst, I have the old dependency, and I also have the new one. So after that, you may clean as you want. It's really up to you to clean. The package doesn't do that because you may want to conserve this previous dependency. And you run the example we showed here, and you still get the same result. So you may see that the color is slightly different here. I don't remember having this kind of blue, if I'm not mistaken. But it's still working, and you may do that. Let's say you want to update the dependency, you can also do that with sharpen. With sharpen, you have the update dependency function. You provide the name of your dependency, and it will check if you have the latest version. It will not do anything. And if you have a very old version, it will update everything. So what I can do is I go back to, I will delete this version, you know, I created for the example, and I will rerun the create dependency. If I run the create dependency like this, it will point to a CDN, so I don't necessarily want to do the CDN, and then yeah, I'm okay with that. I remove the write to left file. So I did that, I think, 3 times during the screencast, but it's really important, so there is no problem doing that. It's really important you understand everything. All right, I redo DevTools all. And now let's assume I have only one dependency. I want to update this dependency. So I provide the name. I want to update Bulma. And the version target, by default, it's latest. So let's say I do like this. It says error because versions are identical. The latest version is 091 and this one is 091, so there is no way I can do that. But if I want to go back to downgrade the version, so I do a version target, and now I want to go to 0.5.0. If I do this, it says, yeah, current version is 091, target version 0.50. The latest is what I have right now. Is I'm downgrading Bulma, and it creates, it replaces everything. And here I erased, I completely removed the old folder, so I don't keep the folders. So this is another way you may work with the dependencies, and you may upgrade them. If I want to update my dependency, I will do like this. And now you see that I have the 091. I went back in time, so I have the very latest one. So you may play with your dependencies exactly as you want. It works for one dependency, but it will work for a lot of dependencies, unlimited dependencies. And this is something you should explore. It's really saving time for you, and this is what matters in that case. All right. So the next step is to, once you created the page template, you imported dependencies, the next step is to create the first template elements. One of the most important template elements I mentioned during the workshop is probably the button, because with a button you can do a large range of actions. You can trigger notifications, models. With just one click, you trigger a lot of different things. This is highly interactive. And here I just run an example. So what you see is a button, and when I click on that button, I have notification. It's fairly simple. It works. It works well, right? What I want is I want to do the same thing with Bulma. I want a specific Bulma button. But before going into Bulma, we need to understand how the action button works. You have a OR function, a base OR function, which is trace, and trace allows you to inspect the code from a function. So if I do trace action button, I get the action button code. And here it's a shiny tag, so you have input ID, label, icon, and as well as other parameters. And I have a button tag which has an ID. There is a class here, and if you look at the class, I would like to highlight the action button class, which is fairly important. Why it's fairly important? Because below I removed the action button class. So I modified the action button, I called it a custom action button, and I just remove that action button class. And look at what happens. I rerun exactly the same application, and now I don't have anything. I don't have anything because the input is not there. Input test doesn't exist anymore. If you try to print input test, it will be null all the time. So one thing that is not explained in this first part, but you heard during the workshop, is the input bindings. An action button is an input, and the way Shiny input works is they try to find this input in the document object model. So here the document object model is the whole web page, and you may have multiple action buttons. And what the input binding does, it will find all those action buttons. And to make them unique, this is the reason why you need the input ID to really identify specifically one input. But what is important is the action button class. If you remove that class, the input binding is not able to find the action button, and you won't be able to get the input at the end. So this is the reason why it doesn't work when I remove the class. So now let's take the Bulma button. How do I know the structure? I go to the documentation. Always go to the documentation. You will spend a crazy amount of time in the documentation, but really no pain, no gain. It's a step to follow. It's obvious. And the structure of the button is extremely simple. It's button tag. You may recognize in the action button function, which has a class button. That's it, no more. Obviously, you have way more configuration after. You can add colors, you can change the size. We'll see that in a few minutes. For now, let's just focus about converting that button into something we can use in Shiny. I use HTML to R, even though here it's really simple. So I will create the Bulma button script and the Bulma button function. For now, I know that it will have two parameters at least. It will have input ID. I copy. This is something you should do. Really makes the template close to Shiny by when you are choosing parameters. It will help people to make the jump into a template. If you follow the same conventions, people will just have to do library Bulma instead of library Shiny and get the same result. And now I will not convert because it's fairly simple. It's a text button, ID equal input ID. And then I need my class. So the class is, if you remember, is button, but also action button. Action button because I want the input binding, the Shiny input binding, to detect this button. Why I do that is because I don't want to rewrite a specific input binding just for that button. If I add that class, it will be able to detect. And this saves me a lot of time. So the most you can reuse, the most time you can get. And I put the label after, which is a simple text. And I'm right with my function. So this is what you should get. And if you try this function, so obviously DevTools load all. If you try your new function, you have a button. It's not nice, right? But it's exactly the same you see here. It's not nice because we don't have colors, we don't have styles. And this is what we are going to see now. So the next step is to add a color parameter. Why I say the next step, because it's the next one in the documentation, but it could be another parameter. I would say it's a wise choice because usually this is what you get in Shiny. You get the color parameter and also the status parameter, which is really, really popular. And here you have several colors. You have the one you get in, if you are familiar with Shiny dashboard, you have or Bootstrap, you have info, success, warning, danger, primary, but you also have other colors like dark, light, black, and so on. So how does it work? In practice? You have the button class, and if you want to add a color, you add is hyphen, and you get the color. So if it's primary color, it's is primary. If it's info, it's is info, and so on. So the way we are going to do it is we will take our action button class and we'll extract it. So we'll create a default class, which is button and action button. This is something we don't want to touch. It's providing the style, and this one is providing a target for the input binding and for reactivity later. And now it's time to modify the codes. So what I want is to add, each time where I specify color, I want to modify the class. So the way I do that, I use the paste 0 function. And what I do is I append a specific class to this code. So I use is hyphen and then color. So if I put color equal primary, I will have button action button is primary. Don't forget the space here because I use paste 0 and there won't be any space by default. And this is it. This is exactly what I need. I will copy this code here. I put it in the function. Obviously I replace a button class, otherwise it will not work. I take my button class and I copy and paste it here. I do DevTools load all to load my new button. And I need to test the button in a Shiny app. So how I do that, I take the previous application, I do color equal warning, or maybe not warning, it's not really visible on my screen. So let's do like this. And you see that I made a mistake here. It's really classic mistake. I forget to add the parameter here. It's not a mandatory parameter. So I use color equal null, and this time I redo DevTools load all. I rerun the Shiny apps, the demonstration, and I have the danger button. And to check it works, it provides an access to the input. What I will do is I use this application, and I will create a server function. So it's input output. And I can, what I do is I create an observe and I will print input test. All right, I run it. I click several times, and if I go back to my R section, in the console I have 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So it means that it's recognized as a Shiny action button and the value is correctly incremented. I can do everything I want with that button from now. And this is it, we are done with that button. And from now, you can really do everything you want. You can add extra parameters, you can add size, you can change the display, you can change the style. Outline is really nice, for instance. And you can even apply the rounded style, you can get a state also. So from now, it's all about exploring the API, And really, it's up to you whether you want to provide something which is easily accessible with a quite low number of parameters or something really customizable with a high number of parameters. It's really up to you. So yeah, congratulations about this first achievement. And yeah, I just say you good luck. And I will record another video for the second part of this workshop. Thank you very much.